Requiem is Korn's 14th studio album. Korn is a band that I've been really getting into and really loving. I listened to their first album finally for the first time a few days ago. I have a full reaction to that up on my Patreon, but this album was one I was very excited for. Now it is very short. It's only 33 minutes. There are, I think, 8 songs on here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 9 songs on here. Whoops. And again, it's short. It's only 33 minutes. So I was interested going into it. And actually, I have to say, I have listened to this album twice. It came out yesterday. I listened to it as soon as I could. And there was a lot I really liked on it, but there were a ton of songs that I just didn't know how I felt about them. So I had to listen to the album for the second time. So just keep in mind, I have listened to this album twice. Now, before listening to the album, I had heard Forgotten and Start the Healing because they were 2 singles that were released previously, like I think months in advance, but those are the only 2. The rest were just in the context of the album. And I have to say, I really enjoyed this album. I don't love it by any means. There are some issues I have with it, but I did really enjoy it. And I mean, I listened to it twice and I already liked it and I could see myself listening to it again. There are a bunch of songs on here that I think are great. I don't love every single song and that's what knocks it down a little bit, but I'm going to talk about all the songs individually just very shortly in a little bit. But my first kind of reaction to the song was, okay, wow, the riffs are just as heavy as I would expect. The drums sound very good. The bass is insanely drowned out, and Jonathan Davis's vocals are really great for the most part. I mean, when they're actually prominent. And what I mean by that is the mix here at times is not really that good. I don't really know why. I don't know who mixed it, anything like that. So again, it's not a personal thing with any mixers or engineers or whatever, you know. But this album was mixed poorly at times, not on all the songs, but there were a few times where I really just could not make out what was happening exactly, and that's why I had to listen to it for the second time, because there were a few songs on here which I couldn't really tell what was happening. I couldn't specifically hear the drums, and, the riffs are heavy and they're what you come to expect, but I still like them. And the bass is really only heard on like 2 songs here, and that is a huge missed opportunity because Fieldy's bass sound is so iconic. It's one of the most unique bass sounds out there, so the fact you can only hear it on like 2 songs is a little bit sad. But with the mixing issues aside, I really liked what this album tackled, and this is kind of like what's known as their softer album, just like lyrically, and that's because it really just talks about kind of healing and moving on from something tragic that happened. And I read through Apple Music that Jonathan Davis's wife passed away, I think recently. I'm not 100% sure when. You can let me know down below. So you can definitely feel this time. Almost every single song here feels like it has something to say about healing and kind of dealing with what just happened and fighting those demons, and I really enjoyed it for that. I think that every song kind of dealt with it, but there were some that really stood out to me, and I'm going to talk about those again in a little bit. But I just love the messages here, and I think that's another reason why the mix kind of stood out to me, is that when I couldn't really hear what was happening with the vocals, or when your brain wasn't really focusing on them because you were trying to figure out what was going on with the drums and then the guitar and the bass, that's where it kind of got a little bit mushy at times. But the lyrics are really great for the most part. But let's talk about all the songs individually. So it opens with Forgotten, and again, this is a song that I had heard before and I really love the song. It's in my top 3 of the album right now. The riff just feels like a classic Korn riff, a classic nu metal riff, and I really love the chorus because it just pounds adrenaline into you just from the command, bow down. Let the Dark Do the Rest features some amazing vocals by Jonathan Davis, and it also feels like it pays tribute to Slipknot by saying the word sick a lot in it. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's just something that I observed as a massive Slipknot fan here. But this is one of the examples where it's a really good song, but the mix kind of does take it down a little bit. Then we have Start the Healing, and this will easily be the biggest song on the entire album. I think it was the first single released, and I have heard this one a few times, and it is really great. It comes in with just this clear message about healing. It's really in the title. It's exactly what you would expect it to be, but it's great. I love the heavy riffs, and just the quiet smashing drums here are kind of pierced by Jonathan Davis's vocals, and that's why I really like the song. I can see why it was released as a single. But then we have Lost in the Grandeur, which opens with a forceful rhythmic riff, but the song never lets up. This is my favorite track on the entire album. Jonathan's subtle vibrato adds a new edge to the song, and the metaphor of being lost in the grandeur resonates with me quite strongly, plus the heavy ending of this song is right up my alley. Now, Disconnect is a song that actually took me 2 listens to really pay attention to, but now that I have heard it clearly, I really enjoy it. I love the opening, I love the drums, the bass is actually audible here, and the smashing drums on those cymbals, they're just awesome. The vocals are slow yet entrancing, and I love how it builds up to this almost simple but impactful chorus. Hopeless and Beaten begins with trembling vocals which slowly crescendo up into a guttural chorus. The lyrics drag this track down though by being a little too simple, which is surprising because it's coming from such brilliant songwriters. By no means is it a bad song, but it is just very forgettable here and an easy weak spot on the entire album. Penance to Sorrow features a powerful chorus that is contrasted well by some slower, quieter verses, although I do wish the song was longer because it definitely takes a fault in being the length it is. It's just only over 3 minutes, which is, you know, the rest of the songs on the album are, but here it is noticeable. I feel like it would have been on the higher end of the album if it was longer, but I do love that build up at the end. Mind Confession is exactly what the title suggests. It feels like an inner battle with oneself, accompanied by extremely heavy riffs and cool guitar effects. Although it's quite passionate at times, there are many moments here that aren't too memorable. And then we have Worst on Its Way, which above all else feels like the most classic Korn song. The bass is very audible here, and maybe that's why I like this song more, because that doesn't really happen on most of the album, and Jonathan's vocals really partner up with the instruments here. Plus, we get some scatting, which is very reminiscent of 90s Korn.
He's bebopping and scatting, and I'm losing it!
Overall, this album is pretty good. There are some noticeable weak spots here, some songs that I talked about that aren't the best, but I think that Start the Healing is really great. Again, the first single, Forgettable, is very good, and Lost in the Grandeur will be on repeat for me for the entire next month. Korn's Requiem provides a great insight into the healing process after loss. The riffs are heavy, the drums are crushed, and the vocals are on point. The mix sometimes can drown out the bass and it can sound a little too compressed at times, but still, I really like this album and I will be listening to Lost in the Grandeur all the time. I'm going to give Korn's Requiem a 3.5 out of 5. Again, a very good album, one that I really enjoy. I could see myself listening to it over and over again, maybe not while looking at the cover on Apple Music just because it moves and it's really awkward here, but I'm excited to explore more about Korn again. I've only really heard of that first album, as well as, you know, a bunch of the big songs, Freak on a Leash, Coming Undone, stuff like that, Got the Life. So I will post more Korn reactions on my Patreon, as well as a ranking of all the songs here, again, on that Patreon. But let me know what you thought of this album. What is your favorite track? Is it also Lost in the Grandeur? Because I've seen a lot of people really love that one. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Over and out.